Fam, I really enjoyed this film. There were some things I did not like about it, but I really overall enjoyed this film. But nonetheless, folks, I know you're excited because I'm so excited too. Let's jump into the review right now. What's up, folks, and welcome back to the channel today for another review. Get hype, folks, because it's time to review The Batman, coming to theaters March 4th. Now, so many things to talk about. I am going to tell you that there will be spoilers. This will be a long review. It's almost 3 hours. There's no way I'm going to be able to get all of my details and information, facts, reaction, all that other stuff in less than 10 minutes. So please stick around, and hopefully, you know, if this is your first time coming across my channel, please subscribe, because we're going to have many more reviews this year and beyond. But The Batman, one of the highest anticipated films of 2022, and maybe even of last year too, but you know how the pandemic and everything was. But ever since this was announced, all eyes were set on its release date. And now that I had a chance to check this out early, tons to discuss. Now, this is the Matt Reeves Batman, and it does truly feel like a Matt Reeves film, like through and throughout. Like if you are a fan of his work, like Planet of the Apes and stuff like that, it feels like it. But the other thing with this is that, you know, it's another Batman film in 2022, and with all the success of the Batman films and the franchise and all the DC comics and whatnot, the biggest thing for me was like, well, what would this film do different that the other ones didn't? And I will say that what I truly love about this film, for it to be the first film within Matt Reeves' hands, it's not an origin story. It is starting 2 years in of Bruce Wayne being Batman, which really puts us in this unique situation, which I got to tell you, and you got to remember that with him being 2 years in, he still doesn't have everything all worked out. He still has a lot of self-doubt. He still isn't the best fighter. He still isn't, you know, elite tier fighter. He doesn't figure out all the things. You know, he's not that Bruce that we're accustomed to seeing on the big screen. He's still figuring a lot of it out. And thus, with that, we see success, but we always see some failures in some of his tactics and so on. But nonetheless, it's still a very, I thought it was a great decision. That's what really made me fall in love with the film, is like, wow, like, I don't know, like, obviously from the comments, but like, I don't know, we haven't seen a Bruce, you know, coming in 2 years in, no origin story, and we're like jumping right into it. And I thought this worked to a T. It was a very successful tactic, and I think you all will appreciate it as well too. But like I said, you know, with it being a Matt Reeves film, another thing I thought was unique to this was that I feel like this may be the most practical Batman that we've seen to date. And what I mean by that is that, like, it wasn't over the top superhero antics and, you know, a whole bunch of just untouchable, unrealistic factors being in the place. I felt like it was very believable. I mean, and the biggest example is that when he got in fights, when it was like 1 versus 10, he actually took some blows. You know, he was getting beat up some. And sure, he delivered back, but, you know, he wasn't untouchable. So, like, a lot of the events that were happening, you kind of was like, yeah, it should be like that. You know what I mean? So that's what I truly was like. Some of my biggest appreciations of the film is that, like, you know, I thought the decision of going 2 years in was smart, and I also felt like this was super practical. So, you know, be ready for that. And I think that's going to be a very good connecting point for the audience, because you're not going to come in and think he's just going to wash everybody he sees. Nah, he's going to take some L's. Be ready for that, okay? But yeah, 3 hours, and for 3 hours it damn sure had been a good movie, because you had a lot of time to tell a lot of story. But with it being 3 hours, I did not enjoy the pacing at all times, especially in that second act. I definitely found myself looking at my watch a little bit more often than none. But it's just because it was a long movie. So I strongly suggest, if you see this film, I mean, of course you're going to see this film, definitely take a bathroom break beforehand. Definitely hydrate yourself properly, but don't overdo it, and get you a nap, because in the second act, it truly feels like a long film. But we'll talk about the third act in a minute. But yeah, the pacing was kind of like introduction and then character building and then action. But that character building part was like, how much time we got left, you know? So there's that. Now, couple of different things to kind of, build up this world of Gotham here. Now, we have Commissioner Gordon, who isn't Commissioner Gordon just yet. He's Lieutenant Gordon, played by Jeffrey Wright. I got to say, Jeffrey is fantastic in this, in all accounts. Now, I was going to say it in a little bit, but I'll just say it now. When Robert Pattinson, who is playing Batman, if you don't know, in the beginning of the film, he's narrating it. So, with him narrating, you're really looking for how does he embrace the Batman and the voice and whatnot. And he does a fantastic job. He really does. And I'm going to come back to this. But it's crazy to think with the job that Robert does, Jeffrey comes in as Gordon. And when he talks, you're just like, oh my God. Like, I already had a spine chill. Now the hair is raising up on my arms and you're just on the edge of your seat. Everything involving Jeffrey Wright in this film was top tier. He's so good. He has to be one of my favorite actors. Like I really sometimes put him in hindsight, but for real, he has to be one of my favorite actors because no matter the role, he just execute top tier all the time. And this, I was not expecting him to really be a scene stealer. But here we are. Here we are. Anyway, while I'm talking about Gotham, let's talk about really quickly what's happening in this film. So, as we know, Gotham is in shambles because it's always in shambles. There's always something going on in Gotham. But with the Batman being 2 years in, he's fighting crime, but he can't be everywhere. We know that. And I don't even think he chooses to be everywhere, but everybody fears him because they know he exists. Well, some people knows he exists because it's still 2 years and some people still thinks of this as like some urban legend and whatnot. But, a lot of people fear, especially all the people out there doing dirt. When you look into the shadows, they think he may be there. So you see everybody, all of the bad guys contemplating some of their actions because they think he eventually might show up. And those villains, when they hear those boots, when they hear that approach of those boots coming through the shadows, they know vengeance is near and it's time to run. But with that being said, a high profile murder has occurred by the Riddler who killed the mayor, and it's clearly not stopping there because the Riddler has a motive. So at this time, Batman's trying to figure out who the Riddler is, who's going to be his next victim. Selina Kyle, Catwoman, played by Zoë Kravitz, is also kind of connected to this because in the path of one of the Riddler's, victims, ends up being one of her friends, and she now has interest into the Riddler and to what the Riddler's motivations is, which then leads her and Batman on parallel paths, which, now that they're all caught up in the midst, they decide we should just work together. But the Riddler, ultimately, his objective is trying to expose the city of lies and corruption. He's trying to unmask the truths of the city. So that's what's going on here. And for 3 hours, it's a lot of different things kind of going on. Now, I was going to also say this a little bit later, but I'll say this now. The Riddler, because of the character, the Riddler essentially makes this film, who's played by Paul Dano, by the way, the Riddler essentially makes this film a murder mystery. So, by all intents and purposes, the clues that he lays out, where some are definitely high level, which I will say that his riddles are really good. They're not just throwaway, laughable jokes. They're actually really sophisticated. Good. I'm going to talk about one in a second. But because of, what this character presents, like, you have to kind of have your detective hat on as well, too, because you're kind of trying to figure out, like, who's his next victim? Who is he ultimately looking for? And, there's a rat somewhere, and he's trying to make sure that, all of Gotham knows who it is. So, wear your detective hat the entire time because the Riddler is laying clues out the entire film. Now, going into the beginning of this film, I will say I was not impressed by the opening. And we know when in the Batman film, we're always looking for that opening scene that truly sets the tone of the film. And I felt like this one was kind of unsatisfying. I was unimpressed, but it's okay because moments after the introduction, we got the introduction of Batman, and that was fire. The suit, the theme, all of it comes together. And like, Robert really makes it known that he's Batman ASAP. Forget all those other characters that he's played in the past, Twilight, Eric Cullen, and all that other stuff. Nah, he makes it very clear that he is Batman, and it takes 10 seconds of him being on screen, you're like, yep, I'm buying into that. And like I said, his narration was chilling. Like I tell you, I had the spine chills. Like he really did a fantastic job with the voice work. As far as the aesthetics, I mean, it's Gotham. I thought the tone and the color grading was good. And this is what Matt Reeves truly succeeds in. He really, that like in all of his films, he gets this to a T. But it's in particular with Gotham, you know, just a certain look that we need, this edgy, rugged look, and it's truly there. Like, so believe that. Like, you know, the set of Gotham really sets a precedence early, you know. Duct tape, I just want to throw this in there. Duct tape fixes everything. We all know that, but you will really discover that duct tape does fix everything bright and early in this film. Now, for a moment, I was not sure because the tone feels dark, so you automatically think, well, this is a rated R film. But afterwards, I looked it up, and it's a PG-13 film. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this film has potential to have a lot more gore and blood. There's some brutality that goes on, but it definitely sways away from all of the gore, the blood, and everything that can really rate this film as R. So, you know, maybe there's another cut somewhere with blood or whatnot, but this is truly PG-13, and it's super noticeable because you're just like, wow, that person is getting his head beat in, and then you're expecting blood splatter, especially by how the cinematography was done, and there wasn't. So what? But you get it. PG-13 means more people can view the film, but I definitely felt like this was a PG. It should have been a rated R film. Like, there's that. And when I talked about the Riddler and his riddles, again, it wasn't just throwaway jokes. Like, he said this one bright and early, which I had to say, let me write this down, because this was really good, actually. And it said, what does a liar do when they're dead? A liar. What does a liar do when they're dead? And they lie still. It's really freaking good. Do you get it? Like, I think it's really good. Honestly, I love that. I'm gonna have to use that somewhere. I don't know when I can use it, but I'm gonna have to use it somewhere. Kind of setting the mindset of Batman here. Like, he has a lot of self-doubt. He also has this old school cowboy feel and demeanor. He's the self-proclaimed nocturnal animal. He's an emo kid, and he doesn't really get out much. He's been, I would say, still battling the grieving within the death of his parents and whatnot, and everything that kind of, you know, came in result of that. And when he does come out of the cave, when he does come into the light, I mean, he even wears glasses at a point, which basically is telling you that, like, his eyes are sensitive to the sun. So he's definitely giving this really emo cowboy feel and whatnot. But again, beyond that, he has a lot of self-doubt. And again, as I say, he's only 2 years in as being Batman, which everybody is nicknaming him Vengeance, and obviously for obvious reasons. But, you know, he's still trying to work through a lot of the processing. And not only just that, not only just the processes of being Bruce, but the processing of being Batman, because now he has a huge responsibility now, and he's still learning. Like, he still doesn't have it all figured out. And I can't, you know, stress enough that, like, the fighting is not one-sided. He is taking blows, he's giving blows. So, like, that's why I really felt like it felt really, this was the most practical of the Batmans, because he's not coming in destroying everybody. But again, to that point, it's because he's only 2 years in. He has a lot more training to do, you know. We all know where this goes beyond this. Now, the moment Zoe hits the screen, oh my God, y'all know I love some Zoe. And I gotta say, if more cat ladies was as hot as her, I would not have a problem with that slander. Like, they really need to, you know, take some motivation from Zoë Kravitz here, our lovely cat ladies out there, you know. But the first time she suits up, and the first interaction that the bat and the cat have together is really good. It's straight out of the comics, because, you know, they flirt with each other the entire time, and it's just like this kinetic tension that they have, this pull and push type of thing, where it's like, I kind of like you, I kind of don't like you, I'm gonna flirt with you a little hard, maybe I may kiss you, is there something here, what's going on? So, like, it's straight out of the comics, and I think Zoe also does a fantastic job of making this character her own, because, you know, and even Robert, like, when you look at both of them in their performances, you do not think like, oh, this reminds me of such and such an iteration. No, they truly are their own characters. And I think I can say that about everybody too, even with the Riddler. I think, you know, with the iconic, you know, casting of Jim Carrey, back in the day as the Riddler. I think that in this case, Paul really makes it his own. And I think you don't look back to say like, oh, Jim Carrey did it better or whatever. I think you just look at them as two different iterations and you appreciate both. And I think that's across the board with the Batman, Catwoman, and Riddler. So there's that. Now, another thing that I will say is Alfred. Alfred Pennyworth happens to be one of my favorite, most underrated characters in DC Comics. Andy Serkis is fantastic in this. And what Alfred's importance in this one is that Alfred is really important to Bruce. He still takes care of him and he helps him get reacclimated back into society because, again, he's really went into the shadows because of everything that's kind of happened. And, he's not just the butler as we're accustomed to, but he's actually right there on the forefront trying to help him really work through his Batman stuff. He's helping him solve riddles, and whatnot. And he's actually pretty good. He's definitely useful and not just a person in the back, serving drinks and whatnot. And he's also really not even a butler because he doesn't even drive Bruce. Bruce drives himself in this. So there's that. But the other thing is that because Alfred he's being the father that Bruce needs since he obviously lost his parents. And I think, we see that relationship, especially in the second act, really elevate. And they had some good moments together. That's for sure. Now, what else have we got to talk? I guess we'll talk about the Riddler now. Now, the Riddler, I got to say, he's John Kramer from Saw in Gotham. Like, in all intents and purposes. He's dark. He's sadistic. He's not really that funny, but he also really comes off like a serial killer. He really, truly reminds me of like the creepy guy next door from The Lovely Bones, like all intents and purposes. But like he's like, again, he's different. He's very serious, and yes, he has his jokes, but like it's like the Zodiac Killer to an extent. It's super different than what we're accustomed to from the big screen. Comics, yes, but the big screen, no. And yeah, he's a legit serial killer. And he has a YouTube channel, which is completely trash. He has 507 followers, and they're definitely like some January 6th type dude. So that's, you take that information for what you want on that note. Now, I gotta say, there was some cool moments in this film that I want to highlight. The first time that we see Batman take flight, I thought it was a good, cool moment for the character. But I was not impressed at all by how that scene was shot. I felt like it was more like a GoPro, and maybe they did use a GoPro. But like, and even when you watch it, you're going to notice some things, which I'm not going to really get into the specifics of, but you will notice some things, which I will say, please remember that he's only 2 years in and being a Batman. So there is some technicalities and whatnot. The suit really isn't truly, He even his whole demeanor about doing the jump, because it looks like a base jump, is very much like, oh my God, what am I doing? I've never done this before type of thing. So like, be very acceptance of that. But overall, I thought I wasn't really impressed by it. It definitely looked like an amateur GoPro base jump shot, and I was really expecting some of the the iconic aerial scenes that we've seen in some of the previous Batmans, and I don't feel like we got it. And I know some people in the audience did love it, but that was very, very thin, shall I say. However, it's cool because moments after that, when the Batmobile was introduced, was completely lit. This was some of the best action in the entire film, and I got to say, when they had the car chase scene, it's truly some of the best action in the film. It was like a mix of like Fast and Furious with Final Destination. I'm pretty sure Dominic Toretto was somewhere in the shadows in this scene, but like it was done masterfully. It was amazing. And I also think that my next car will have to be a Maserati Gran Turismo, because much like everybody buying the R8 because of Iron Man, I think I need to have the Maserati to say, yep, I got the car that smoked the Batmobile, because it was legitimate, like a race at a point. It was cat and mouse, but like it was cool, and the Maserati was definitely giving the Batmobile some go. But like, yeah, that whole sequence was amazing. It was amazing. Now, here's something funny. I wrote in my notes that like the Penguin was funny, really good performance by blank. Wait, who's playing the Penguin? Colin Farrell, who you cannot tell at all is him. Good prosthetics. I mean, the makeup crew really got their money's worth here on this one. You couldn't tell, but such a good performance. And I have to say, pay attention, because with the Penguin, who isn't our main, antagonist here, he does give you a couple of Easter eggs. You may get the Penguin walk, and it's a very almost uncanny moment because you really don't see it coming, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But like I said, talking a little bit more about some of the characters. Again, I think when it comes to Zoe and Robert, their chemistry was straight out of the comics. It was fantastic. That awkward tension. And again, it's clear there's something there between the two of them, and as the audience, you're kind of like, oh my god, would they kiss? And then they're like, maybe not, maybe so. And that back and forth, tug of war battle, they really pulled from the source material of the comics and really made it come to life on screen. I also thought it was cool because we got a lot more backstory about Bruce's parents, who we all thought they were angels, but it's Gotham, and we all know no one in Gotham is completely hands-free clean. And so we got to learn a lot about what his parents was up to before they were murdered and whatnot. So there's that. The pacing, again, very long. The second act was just long, but it had to deal with a lot of the character building. So that when it comes down to the final act, I legitimately prayed, please, we need the action. We need this. Otherwise, I don't know how I'm gonna feel about the film. We need to bring it home now, and for sure, they did. Exactly at the hour mark is when things started to turn up. Now, Zoe in the hand-to-hand combat department, she held her own. I thought some of the Catwoman fight scenes were really dope, very unique, very Catwoman-ish, and I thought Zoe did a fantastic job in this. Whether she did her stunts or not, the portrayal of Catwoman and whoever did it, fantastic job. Period. But then, when we got the Batman's fight, now this one was out of the trailers, when he was fighting in the dark and the bullets was hitting him and whatnot, which was super impressive in the trailers. Really sold me on the movie. Seeing it in sequence of the film was really good. I thought this was one of the other best scenes within the film. This was really dope. If this wasn't in the trailer, I probably would have liked this a lot more. Seeing it for the first time, oh my god, truly Batman-ish, that's for sure. And a couple of things else too that I should note, that I really did like Gotham New York better than Gotham Chicago, if you know what I mean. I thought the aesthetics of New York just really feels, I don't know, I just feel more connected to knowing that that's the Gotham that we're getting, the New York Gotham instead of the Chicago Gotham like in the Christopher Nolan ones. And by the way, speaking of Gotham News were really on top of all of the scoops. Every moment they were breaking news, because there's always something happening. Those poor reporters, I don't think they had families, because they were literally reporting news all the time. I mean, they had more scoops than TMZ. They were on it left and right. Anytime something was happening, they were on top of it, because obviously the Riddler was on a killing spree. And like I said, you have to wear your detective hat with the Riddler, because he essentially makes this film a murder mystery. So he's laying out clues, and you're trying to figure out who he may target next, who he's connected to, who is he talking about, who is the person of interest. So that's what was really cool about it. But overall, I thought talking a little bit more about some of the critic stuff here, there were some funny moments. The cinematography was good, the choreography was good, the score was fire. Michael really is so good. Anything he touches, I'm starting to want to make him take that step over Hans Zimmer for me. But he's really good, and the score was great. The theme for the Batman was this old Western acoustic guitar, guitar strumming, rhythm and beat. It really was so good. I still have it in my head. It's just that good. I really loved it. So I gotta say, the score was fantastic, and again, I thought it was a solid film throughout and throughout. I had a really good time with it. It was just long. It was long, and I'm not gonna sit here and say oh, this was my favorite movie or that was my favorite movie, whatnot. I just really appreciated this. This one, I was a little bit on the fence and had my reserves about it, but now checking it out, I'm like, yo, this was pretty damn good. Just long, but damn good. And I thought Robert, who, everybody want to slander him about Twilight and whatnot, but let's not forget, dude has been putting in work for a while. You know, Tenet and Lighthouse, he can act. It's not even a question. And I really like the fact that he took on this challenge and really bodied it, like for real, for real. But last thing I want to kind of say, and this will be a little bit more into the spoiler territory because we're in the last 30 minutes of the film here. You know, the last 30 minutes really was the icing of the cake. This is when we truly got the action that we were expecting from the Batman. Some of the casual scenes that were, some of the scenes that we're accustomed to seeing, by like how it's shot and whatnot. Batman, you know, seeing Batman walk, and we got the angle from his back and he's walking against the, towards the villains and whatnot, inside of look like a smoke scene type of thing, was really dope. And again, it's very practical because he didn't wash anybody. He definitely took some L's, but it was still pretty cool to kind of see like the, yes, this is the Batman sequence that I've been waiting for. This is the Batman sequence that I'm used to seeing. And in the last 30 minutes definitely brought it home, like true Batman fashion. And, you know, like I said, this was still a fresh take on it. If you're familiar with the comics, then you're like, yeah, I'm very much accustomed to this style of Batman. But on the screen, this one was truly refreshing because it was not like any of the previous ones we had seen. Again, he wasn't an elite fighter. He wasn't in the most insane physique. He didn't have all the gadgets and whatnot. You know, he really just was still becoming into his own. And that's what I really appreciated about it. And, like, it's cool because this is like a sequel to an origin story, and then you think, well, what's beyond this? And I think there's so much potential where they can go next, which we'll talk about in one quick second. But I do like how we're seeing the becoming into his own Batman, but we're not starting at the very beginning. We're starting at a point where we're like, yeah, I got some knowledge of this character, but like, what story, what iteration are we telling here? And we're starting at that point where we're getting that iron out now to see where we go beyond this. Now, they were in Gotham Square Garden, aka Madison Square Garden. The visuals inside of the garden was really dope. And you know, a little disaster or something happens, and Gotham, the arena essentially becomes New Orleans after Katrina. Well, Gotham becomes New Orleans after Katrina and whatnot. So when you kind of see this scene inside of Gotham Square Garden, you know, how they the visuals of it, I thought was really good and really noteworthy, to the point that I was like, you know what, I know some like things are kind of happening, but like this looks really cool, like really does, you know. And again, with all of this, you still got this Batman with this old school Western old cowboy acoustic guitar theme going on, and it just makes it all so much better. Again, props to Michael, he's so good at what he does. He's a fantastic composer. Now, talking about the sequel here, now I started to wonder, like, man, there's a lot of potential where this can go next. I would be down for a lot of different things, and I was thinking, like, well, are they going to give us a hint? Will they not? I will say this, folks. Pay attention to the end. When the Riddler is in jail, pay attention to him, because there's some major clues. Like, it's not even a clue. It's like dead in your face, and I guess we have a clue where things will be going next, and I think people won't be disappointed. I am very intrigued, so just pay attention. You know, it's going to be something. And you know, the Riddler got a laugh out of it, and I sort of got a laugh out of it as well. I think everybody involved got a laugh out of it, so it was a very laughable moment. So we'll see where the laughs go beyond this, you know. But listen, I will say this: at the conclusion of the screening, the audience, there wasn't no claps. I don't think no one truly was like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever seen. But I think everybody got a great appreciation for it. Maybe not totally in love with it, but did like it. I think there was a good feel coming out of the theaters. I know I had a good time with it beyond the pacing. And I think that's the only thing, is seeing something that's 3 hours, and you know, some of us are old folks, you know, we're past our bedtimes now. I think that could be a potential issue for like the mood and maybe the demeanor of folks coming out of the theater. So I would highly suggest to see this a little bit earlier in the day. But overall, I think everybody was in good spirits. I think everybody was like, yo, that was worth it. I'm not disappointed at all. And that's a good thing. So with all the reservations I had going into this, I'm not mad. It was a good film, and I highly suggest. I don't even have to tell you, but I know everybody's going to want to check this out. And if you want to know if there's after the credit scene, there is a very little stinger at the very end of this film, to a point that I don't even think it's even worth waiting, but it is there. But yeah, I can't wait to see what Matt Reeves does nats with this franchise. This was something. So yes, folks, check it out. The Batman in theaters March 4th. Fantastic film. Really enjoyed it. Jump in the comments, let me know your thoughts about this, and as always, stay tuned for more reviews very soon. Big old bell.